and hurriedly leaves. Sheba catches up with her, asks for forgiveness, and says she tried, that she needs her support and help more than ever. Barbara tells her that she has fallen in love with the boy. But do you imagine he reciprocates your soppy feelings? I dare say he's fascinated by the neurotic compulsions of a middle-class lady with marital problems. Boys are the cruelest, and Barbara knows them. Once he's had his fill, he'll discard her like an old rag. She's not young anymore. Sheba goes straight home to Stephen and finds out that everything this boy has been telling her turns out to be untrue about his vicious father and difficult relationships with his parents. Stephen tells her that she wanted a sob story, and she got it. He also says that it was supposed to be fun, but now their relationship has gone too far. Hart realizes that she may have made the biggest mistake of her life, and with tears in her eyes, leaves the boy alone. Realizing that she was simply used and believed in something that is essentially impossible, Sheba cries into her best friend, Miss Covet's coat, who now has only one thing on her mind, as her mother would have said. The boy done her like a kipper. She had nowhere to turn but to her trusty old Barbara. Now she mopes and mourns for her pubescent paramour, but she knows her friend's intervention saved her life. Barbara is very glad that Sheba has begun to understand that her dalliance with Mr. Connolly was a consequence of her dead marriage, a sham fueled only by the memory of former glories. Barbara is also glad that their relationship with Sheba has now entered a new level. In fact, they are entering a delicate new phase. Now, more than ever, they are strongly bonded by their shared secret. After some time, Miss Covet's cat Portia dies, and Barbara comes to Sheba. She asks her to go with her to bury the cat. But at that moment, Sheba is going with her family to her son's school, where he will have a performance. Barbara is very unhappy that Sheba is prioritizing her family over her grief. She tells her that someone has died, and that is much more important. And also her husband adds fuel to the fire by telling Barbara to leave them alone. Miss Covet says she thought Sheba understood what friendship means and continues to pressure her, telling her not to play the good mother. Barbara asks her to stay with her, telling her to think very carefully about her choice, because there could be consequences. But Sheba asks her not to make this mean any more than it is, and they leave with the children and her husband. Barbara, devastated by grief, buries her cat. At that moment, one of the teachers from the school comes to her and asks Miss Covet about Sheba Hart. It turns out that he is in love with her and wanted to seek advice from her to find out if Sheba mentions him in conversations with her friend. Attaching great importance to their friendship, hurt by Sheba's betrayal, Barbara decides to start a rumor and tells him that her taste is far from adult men, recounting that she might have heard something about her relationship with 10th grader Stephen Connolly. Barbara begins to relish the thought that this is her last night of her old life, wondering how long her messenger will spread the news. People like Sheba think they know what it is to be lonely, to be so chronically untouched that the accidental brush of a bus conductor's hand sends a jolt of longing straight to groin. Sheba and her like have no clue. Hart calls her the next day, apologizing for that situation, for her husband, and for not being there for her, while also inviting her over for dinner. Everything is going well. They are chatting, sharing each other's stories, when suddenly Stephen's mother arrives and begins accusing Sheba that she is a slut. How could she seduce her boy? That he is still a child, and she will be held accountable for everything. Her husband creates a grand scandal, while Barbara, by the time having taken her seat in the gods, watches as the final act of the opera begins. The husband accuses his wife of being insane, that he is 15 years old, and how could she do such a thing? Sheba says she just wanted him, and that's all, and doesn't know why. From this moment, Sheba's life completely changes. The whole school finds out about it. She gets detained by the police, and Barbara in turn feels relieved. She realizes that the boy simply cracked and told everything to his mother, and who is Barbara to persuade her otherwise. From the news, she learns that the police have information, that another teacher was aware of everything. After this, the principal tells her that she is an accomplice if she knew about it and didn't report it to the principal. Barbara says she knew nothing about it. It turns out that Miss Covet already had a similar friendship with a teacher before Sheba. And that story also ended badly. The friend had to leave the school and sued Barbara. As a result of the court ruling Miss Covett is now prohibited from approaching her closer than 500 meters, she sent her fiancé a wreath. In the end, her own rumors that she had started turned partly against her, and she had to leave the school. Sheba asks to stay with her for a while, saying that Richard, her husband, needs some time alone, and Barbara is only too happy to do so. There's swinish press around, the stringent bail terms, meetings with lawyers and so on. But all things considered, they're coping admirably. The cuckold permits her to see their children once a week, but in time she'll recognize she's just not the mothering kind, and then Barbara will be there to comfort her, nurse, beloved friend, and wise counselor. Sheba finds a crumpled piece of paper with Barbara's notes in the trash bin and realizes that she keeps a diary. Turning the whole house upside down, she finds it and reads all the confessions of her elderly friend, in which she learns about her preoccupied with her and flattering words about her family, the same ones I mentioned at the beginning. Barbara deprived her of her family because she did not help her collect her cat. Covett says she gave her exactly what she wanted, that she would still be stuck that marriage without her. Hart tells her she is completely nuts. She put her in prison for 2 years with her antics, thinking they'll fly by and they'll be together afterward. Realizing that her elderly friend is a total nutcase, keeping a diary with intimate details, even pasting a strand of her hair into it, she nearly goes insane. Barbara screams that she is a vain selfish, thinking she has a divine right. She thinks Sheba belongs entirely to her. At that moment, Hart grabs the diary and rushes out to the press. Sheba returns home, and eventually her husband forgives her. Sometime later, we learn that Sheba Hart has been sentenced to 10 months, and Barbara Covett finds herself another victim to relieve her loneliness. And lastly, a little truism for you. Life is always so much more fantastic than our fictions.